Hey everyone, it's Nancy, and I have received a ton of requests for a tutorial on my Shabby Chic keys. These are the regular household keys or office keys or whatever keys you have. When these are in your stash or in your hoard collection, you won't use them, but if you make them super cute, then you will. So I'm going to show you what I did to my keys. Well, for the most part. I used the Ranger Dauber paints because these are permanent on metal. Like I said in my other video, I don't know about other acrylic paints, if they are or they are not. They might be. That's great. You know, try to use whatever you have and just experiment. I've colored painted three keys so far to show you. I have this one's in Juniper, this one's in Shell Pink, and this one's in Peach Bellini. And this one that I'm going to do is with the Cloudy Blue. So all I'm going to do is just paint the key with the dauber. And when you get to like the little crevice areas, you will have to squeeze your dauber a little more to get it to go down in there. I'm hoping you can see this. So just put the first little layer of paint on your key. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then what I'm going to do is just use my heat gun and just dry the key. And please keep in mind that these are metal and they get very hot, and you will burn yourself if you touch this key after you've heated it with your heat tool. And I don't want anybody getting burned. So after you dry your key, let it sit for a few minutes before you try to handle it. Or if you have tweezers, you can pick it up like that. Like I need to move this one. So I'm just going to grab my tweezers and move it out of the way. Like that. So, and then I'm going to wipe up my little mess here. I have a couple ready. On the first set of keys, after I painted it with the Ranger Dauber, then I went in and I put the crackle medium over it and I let that dry. And I don't heat set my crackle medium because to me it doesn't work the same, so I just let it naturally dry, which does take a couple hours. And then I went over it with the white paint to give that shabby background like this. So we're going to start with the Peach Bellini one because for the most part it's dry, and I'm going to show you how I apply the Distress Embossing powders to it. So all I do is I'm going to move these back some more. I just take a plain piece of scrap paper and shake up your embossing powders really well, okay? So make sure that they're shook up really well so that the sand or whatever it is in there that makes it come off is mixed in really well, so you get pretty much the same. Okay, so now I'm going to do is just sprinkle a little bit of embossing powder. This one is Tattered Rose. And then I'm going to use some Vintage Photo, and I'm just going to pour that right with it. Like that. And then what I do is just kind of scatter a little bit the embossing powders to try to blend it. I don't want it completely mixed because I still want you to see the brown and I still want you to see the pink. I didn't get my embossing pad. Hold on just a second. And I'm going to grab my script stamp. And I'm going to grab my Archival ink. Okay, now that I have everything ready. Sorry, squeaky chair alert. Okay, so this is my grimy Distress Embossing pad. I've had this one forever. I have a clean one, for nicer surfaces, but for this it doesn't matter. And all I do is I take my finger and I dunk it down in the ink pad just to get that embossing ink on there. And I take my key and I just touch my key, here and there, wherever I want it. Not real heavy. If you want to smash your key down in there, that's fine. You can do that. It's up to you. It's how you want your key covered. And then I take the key that I put the embossing powder aside and I stick it in there and I just rub it around. just to add the embossing powder, like that. We'll see, it might be too thick, so I'll put it on an empty area and just swipe it real quick, and it takes a little bit of that off. Okay, now I'm going to heat set this. I'm just going to move this out of the way, and I'm just going to heat set it. And again, please remember that these keys get very, very hot, okay? While this one cools, after I melt the embossing powder, while this one cools, we're going to finish coloring that blue key. But there's so many options for this. You can use your Lindy's, you can use your Glimmer Mist, you can use your micas, whatever you want. So I'm just melting the embossing powder. And the heated craft tool by Ranger, it does take to me a little longer. So what I'll do is I'll just let it start it so that the powder isn't flying off. And then I'll go in with my Marby because it blows harder, and to me it'll melt it faster. So excuse the noise real quick. I'm just going to make sure this is good and melted. The cord stuck. There we go. So I'm just going to make sure this embossing powder is really nice and melted on there. Okay, should be good. Now again, very, very hot. So I'm going to set it off to the side and let it cool down. And then we're going to finish painting the blue key. So I'm just going to flip it over and do the same thing. I'm just going to apply the paint to the key and choose whatever color you want, whatever color you have. The pastel colors are great, Shabby Chic colors. And again, I'm going to squeeze it pretty good to get down in that crevice. Okay. I'm going to wipe this up real quick before it dries. And then I'm going to heat set this to move it along. It's pretty quick and easy, and they're a lot of fun. You can just do so much with them. Okay, that gives it a pretty good running start. I'm going to move it out of the way. And let's bring this pretty green one down here. And I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to show you if you dunk your key in your embossing ink, what the difference is. So again, with the same embossing powder, I'm just going to stick my key in there and rub it around to apply the embossing powder. And you can see there that it gives more of a coverage, a solid coverage. But again, it's just, you know, however you want it to look. So I'm just going to heat set that real quick. Hopefully, since my mat is warm underneath here, it won't take as long. You can also use your, like your paintbrush and a little, if you have the distress re-inker or any type of re-inker for embossing ink, you could take a really fine paintbrush and you could paint patterns on your key and then put your embossing powder on there. That would be cute. You could like do some custom flourishes or something. You can't overheat distress embossing powder. You can't scorch it like you do others, so you don't really have to worry that it's gonna mess up if you overheat it. You just want to make sure that it cools down before you try to wipe the grains off of it. Okay, that one should be good. You can tell how hot my mat is because it's bubbling under there. So I'm just going to move that one. Wipe that up a little bit. Okay,